Probably don't want to talk about that on the podcast. Go ahead and close that one down.
Yeah. It's okay. We could talk about whatever Lauren and Sam are talking about.
Who knows? Who knows? All my little things over here always fall down.
In just a moment, we'll all know.
Yeah, it's true.
Live.
La da da. Ba ba ba. Ba ba ba.
Oh well.
Ba ba ba. We're going at it tonight. Ba ba dee ba ba doo ba 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 tonight.
You know what I miss?
Hanging out with me.
Definitely. Also, where's your ukulele?
I was about to say that.
We haven't. Oh, on demand. Look at that.
I was about to say that. So the new song I've been working on. Working all day for a mean little man with a clip-on tie and a rub-on tan. He's got me running around the office like a dog around a track. When I get back home, you're always there to rub my back. Hey, Julie, look what they're doing to me, trying to trip me up, trying to wear me down. Julie, I swear it's so hard to bear it, and I'll never make it through without you around. Never make it through without you around. Hours on the phone making pointless calls. I got a desk full of paper that means nothing at all. Sometimes I catch myself staring into space, counting down the hours till I get to see your face. Hey, Julie, look what they're doing to me, trying to trip me up, trying to wear me down. Julie, I swear it's so hard to bear it, and I never make it through without you around. Never make it through without you around. Do you remember that song?
No.
I learned it on, it was on Scrubs. How did it come to be that you and I must be far away from each other every day? Why must I spend my time filling up my mind with facts and figures that never add up anyway? Never add up anyway. Working all day for a mean little guy with a bad toupee and a soup-stained tie. He's got me running around the office like a gerbil on a wheel. He can tell me what to do, but he can tell me what to feel. Hey, Julie, look what they're doing to me, trying to trip me up, trying to wear me down. Julie, I swear it's so hard to bear it. Uh-oh. And I never make it through without you around. No, I never make it through without you around. No, I never make it through without you around. I always have my ukuleles on demand, man.
On demand.
Come on now.
Yeah. So there, and I wish I had his handle, but there's a guy on TikTok who takes popular songs and then sings them in the form of those sea shanties with that kind of
Oh, that's
setup.
funny.
It's rather impressive, really.
I guess, yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
I'm not that good. I'm not that talented. I appear to be talented, but it's because I pick very easy songs. The only thing hard about that song is that you've got to switch between the 4 easiest chords fast. But again, they're easy chords.
You know how to frame your abilities in the proper light, right?
That's right.
That's what it's all about.
You know how you make yourself look good? Do things you're really good at. That's all there is to it. Like, refrain from doing things that are difficult or hard, and you will always look good. And that has been the Behind the Beards message for today.
That's right. Here's your little tidbit, right?
That's right.
Hang on, let me save this before it goes away. Pop in here, and...
Till we're all growing a beard, a man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for beer.
Man, what's up, guys? It is a beautiful, rainy, cloudy Tuesday morning here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and this is Behind the Beards. Here on Behind the Beards, we will pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and do our best to reveal the things that you need to know about your ministers and your ministry leaders and those people who are called to lead your church. I am Josh Fowler, a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, and my man, my partner, my compadre, Aaron Partlow, is a youth minister, Longview, Texas. Finally, you have become a Texan. A Texican.
Live in Texas. I don't know that I will ever become a Texan, but I definitely live here.
You definitely live there. That's right. Man, we got some really cool things coming up as we've been talking over the last few days. That
we do. We got some. What is it called? Something in the fire. Something in the oven.
Yeah,
not buns in the oven.
Irons
in the fire. We got some irons in the fire.
Let's just make this clear right now. There are no buns in the oven.
No one is pregnant on Behind the Beards.
That is man, I don't want to say especially true for me, but you know, my youngest child graduates next year. I cannot imagine starting fresh at this point in my life. But
one more time.
I will not tempt God's sense of humor by saying I would never. Because that's when he likes to show up and say, "Oh yeah, let me show you something." But very cool stuff.
You thought Abraham was old.
That's right. That is right. No, but I'm really looking forward to what we have coming up, and I'm not sure if we're going to start this in the next week or two or three.
We want to do it right. We want to do it right. That's our major concern about it. So. Yeah,
but really taking a look at. Depression, not just how it affects ministers, but how it affects us all, in the way that affects our pursuits spiritually.
Right.
And when Revelation talks about abandoning that first love, I think the pandemic has revealed a lot about a lot of people and a lot of places, and maybe, at least in my own life, it has exposed some very real cracks, some flaws, some chinks in my psyche that I'm looking forward to exploring a little deeper. And we'll have some guests come on that are have a greater expertise than you and I, who can really help us talk through some of those things and how we can deal with them, and look at some resources that may be available to navigate these waters ahead. Because
I
think we're going to be looking at a lot of really some PTSD kind of effects as things return to normal and people's minds and spirits begin to relax from the pressure and tension they felt over the last year. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of those things will be exposed, and we need to be prepared to deal with them and direct them. So.
In talking about those kind of things like this post-COVID season and moving towards that and how things start to look and everything, today we are talking about this idea of how do you navigate periods of transition? And what reminds me of that is like that idea of, you guys might not know this, but a lot of ministers have taken on a lot of extra outside duties to kind of navigate through what COVID looked like. Maybe your minister has become your, tech guy, or sets up your live stream and does all that kind of stuff. And that's really like not within his realm of like doing ministry, but more, and we can go in and out on that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is at some point we have to involve other people. At some point we have to reach out. Sometimes we need to find people who have a passion, or really it's not even a passion, but who are able and willing to do something like that. And so as ministers learn to adjust to kind of take some stuff off their plate, allow other people to jump in and continue to do that. That's like this transition period. And so this morning we wanted to talk about like how do you prepare and how do you get ready and what are we doing to prepare for transitions and transition periods?
Oh, you're asking me? I thought I was supposed to
No,
ask you.
that was just a blatant statement so
okay.
that you could
Phew.
jump on in there.
No, that's good because I really thought you were asking me that question. I was counting on this next 45 minutes to really explore that question because
Yes. No. No, that's not what I was saying. Like that's what we're talking about this morning. So maybe you can take a couple seconds to tell everybody a little bit more about that. About transition periods and stuff.
Yeah, we have them all, right? And it's natural. I think about it right now as my daughter is getting ready to.
That's right.
Take off. She graduates on Friday, and it is bittersweet, and I like to focus on the sweet so that the bitter doesn't become really a reality, right?
So that I don't become bitter and angry.
And I give my kids a hard time, and I tell them all the time. It's like, look, like Jody, when are you moving out?
Right.
She moves into OC on July 31st. August 3rd, as soon as we get home, her room is becoming a home gym.
Ooh.
That's not the case, but I like to kind of tell her that over and over again.
It's nice to dream.
It is nice to dream. And mainly that's, part of it is this is what you raise your kids for, right? I mean, you raise them to take that next step. And she's ready. She is an independent girl, a young woman. She's responsible. She makes good choices. And she is ready to be on her own in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what we hope for. That's what we spend 18 years preparing them for. But then it gets to that point, and it's kind of like, wow, I don't really want to see one of my little birdies flying the nest,
I kind of like having you around.
I kind of like having family. And, that's been especially real for us. We put Dustin on a plane January 1st of 2019.
And when did he tell you that he wanted to go into the Marines? Like, wasn't it like 3 months ahead of that, so you really didn't have like that prep time?
Yeah, so it was in like October of his senior year was the first time in his life he ever mentioned anything about being in the military.
I think I remember that because I remember you calling me and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, right?
Wait, which child is this? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, and so, we focus on, I focus on this. It's like, hey, I'm going to be an empty nest at 45 years old. I'm going to have a whole life ahead of me to live out my dreams. So you children, get out of my house, get out of my way, and I can come visit you whenever I'm ready. And that's partially true because, like I said, this is what we raised it for. Right?
Josh is ready.
But at the same time, there is you mourn kind of that passing of the naivety, the innocence of childhood as they move on to their own. And so it really is such a mixture of emotions. I don't know if you know this or not, but when you have children that are old enough to graduate, that means you're getting older as well.
True.
And this gray stuff in my beard probably would be on my head if I had hair on my head. I don't lose weight or get back in shape as quickly as I used to. And so these transitional periods really bring you to all kinds of different points of engagement with the mind and the spirit. So that's kind of where it comes in my life is with my daughter. And then we've just sent some kids off in our youth group, You just had Senior Sunday.
Had Senior Sunday. Senior transitions are kind of, they are an interesting and a hard transition because, you have some seniors who are here all summer. You have some seniors who, like my parents, when I transitioned my senior year, I was going to OC, but I went and worked at a church camp that was about an hour and a half away. So I would leave on, Sunday evening after church, and I would go and I would be out there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday night, I would leave Friday night, drive all the way back to Oregon City. So really, I only saw my parents Friday night, Saturday, Sunday morning, and then I would leave to go back out. So that was my senior summer with my mom and dad. So they were already had to be in this transition period where I graduated and I was gone. I was gone already. And so it was, that's kind of interesting for some of those senior parents and for some of those, and especially if it's their first time. Now, I was their third, so, like, the door was already open for me to leave.
Yeah, right.
I'm kidding. My parents loved me, and they were sad when I left. Actually, my mom's told me, I told her, I said, are you going to be okay if I go to college in another state? And she said, Aaron, I don't know what it was, but there was something about you that I just knew, and God had been preparing my heart for a long time, that you were going to leave. Like, that you were going to leave. You were going to be my child who traveled and left and went away. And it was two things. One, it was freeing to me, and then two, it's pretty amazing that she said that and felt that way, because yeah, I went to Oklahoma Christian, and yeah, I did youth ministry in Washington for 2 years, but that was still 3 hours away from home. And then, we were in Kansas for 7.5 years, and now we're down here in Longview, Texas. I mean, I couldn't be further away from home unless I went to Florida,
Don't go to Florida. And
I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, so it's just, that's the crazy ideas, crazy thoughts there. So yeah, I feel transitions are interesting. And so my point was not to talk about me, but my point was, when you transition seniors out of your youth group, you can actually lose this crazy feeling in your youth group, right? You graduate these mature kids. Sometimes you graduate all of your really good singers. And you went from having this awesome youth group who can sing harmony, and you're like, all praises be to the King of Kings. And then you get to the point where you're like, no, we ain't singing no song with a 4-part, and we ain't singing no song with an echo, because y'all don't echo, It's amazing how fast that can shift and how fast that can change. And you find yourself in this position where you're hungry and you want to sing as a youth group, but nobody's been trained, nobody's been led in that way to carry or sing or lead in those parts. And so you find yourself, like right now at Longview, my kids, they are starting to open up their shell. We've been doing Wednesday nights where we come in, we sing for 30 minutes, and then I do a devotional, and then I send them on their way, kind of a thing. Just an uplift, kind of an easy night. And the first night we did it, it was like, all right, Aaron's going to sing a solo for 30 minutes, and it's pretty like bleak. And I asked them, I said, do y'all like singing? They said, oh, we love it. We just haven't done it for like 2.5 years. So they don't know what their own voice, what their own sound of their youth group is. So now
and in the youth group in 2.5 years, voices change.
That's an eternity.
Kids go from tenor to bass in a hurry.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just wild. And so anyway, so now we're transitioning back into that. Now it's been like 6 weeks, and we're at a point now where, they're starting to sing out a little bit. But there's a lot of songs that they don't know. So I get up there and I lead a song, and I'm like, do you guys know this? And they're like, no. And that's one of the nice things about keeping it informal, is you're able to you're also able to just stop and say, well, let's learn this. So it's interesting when we find ourselves in those places where we haven't prepared for transition. So yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it is. You see it particularly with young people, because there is a natural period of transition that is both expected and predictable. So when you come through here and your seniors get to a point, you see it coming, but it always comes on us so quickly, even when we know it's coming. And frequently it is, bless you, may the devil never get you.
Woo!
Thank you for muting your mic for that sneeze.
I got it.
And if we had been on Instagram Live, that would have just blown all of our Instagram viewers.
I would have had to be like,
but there is a void that's left to fill.
Right.
And even if your seniors aren't super strong leaders, even if they aren't necessarily spiritually mature or the kind of leaders that you've wanted them to be, because of their age and because of their presence and because of the expectation we have in our culture, there is a void there, and that will be filled.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And our objective as leaders is to fill that void with something that will be spiritually strengthening, that will allow our group as a whole to mature.
Right. Yeah.
And ultimately, and we'll talk about this as we kind of close up today later, is how do we, or how should we be preparing people down the road to step into these places once they open, to fill these voids, leading leaders, preparing and training leaders, because there is to be filled. I think about those last summers. I think about those last moments with my son, my oldest, before he graduated and before he went to the Marine Corps. And all of a sudden it got very, very real that the amount of time that I had to impart wisdom into his life got really, really brief all of a sudden. You've had 18 years to pour into this child. It's like, I only have like 10 to 12 weekends left before he goes on to whatever it's going to be. And it kind of gets that way with those people that are getting ready to go on to college. It's like, have I done enough to prepare them for what's next, to fulfill my obligation to them as a spiritual leader and mentor? And so, that responsibility becomes really heavy.
Sure.
We're looking right now at a family at our church that, has been one of those families that you don't even realize how instrumental they have been into the things that go on in the church here.
Right.
He is one of the deepest and most profound thinkers I've ever come across in my life. Whoa. And when he sits forward and begins to ask a question in one of my classes, I get nervous because it's like he's going to make me think, and he's going to make me think on the spot. And so I have to really be prepared to say, that is a great question, and I'm going to have to take a week to mull this over, and I'll bring you an answer next week.
Right, yeah.
Because he's going to challenge me with it. Mm-hmm. His wife is one of those people who is just so observant. Mm-hmm. When we were getting ready to hire a new secretary, she came to me with 4 pages, front and back, handwritten. Said, this is what you're going to want to teach the new secretary. She doesn't work in the office. She's never worked in the office. Right. She did some things on her Mother's Day out for a while. But because she is so in tune to what's going on, I was like, yeah, I know what I need my secretary to do. And I started reading her list, and I was like, ooh, I didn't think about that. It's like, ooh, I didn't think about that either. Right. It was like, there's like 3 pages here I didn't think about. This is gold. I'm going to frame it. I'm going to hang it up. And they're moving to Ohio to take care of some of her family's property. The pandemic has provided him an opportunity to continue to do his job remotely, and they're going to go take care of some of their family obligations there. And
that's cool.
losing that family, yeah, it's awesome for them. But losing that family is going to create a void that needs to be filled. And I'm looking at this going, how are we going to fill that void that they are leaving behind? Because we have not done a very good job of setting up people to take those reins once that's left. So
we have to be in that business too. I remember in Kansas we had one of our deacons of technology. Like he's at a stage of his life where he wants to travel more. He wants to be able to do some of that stuff, but he was tied down because he had never trained anybody to work the PowerPoint or all this kind of stuff, and it was like, no, you can't. Like, we don't have anyone else to do this, and so. Like, when we're really thinking about that, I guess, like, there's this deeper idea that I think about is, and it's probably because we're studying that book, we're reading through that book, D2 by Phil McKinney. about creating more disciples.
Right.
And in our faith, one, we should be creating more disciples in our faith. And I guess when I think about ministry, this was something I didn't want to talk about, but we're going to anyway. Like, I have a deep fear of like not being needed. I do. We are supposed to train and teach other people to do what we do. Like that's all there is to it. Like I need to pour into other people so that they can continue and do my work if I'm not there. Kind of an idea, you know. That's what I think when you look at successful ministers, successful elders, successful deacons. That's what they do. They inspire and they teach other people to do what they do. They pass that torch, not necessarily so that you can, get out of doing whatever you want to do, but because when it comes time to transition, or hey, you're at a point where you're like, we need to install some more elders, some new elders. You don't go, man, we got like 2 or 3 people who could actually do it. You end up looking around the room and you go, the pool is so large to choose from because you already have so many people who are shepherding. You already have people who are serving in those areas that getting a title, right, is not adding much to their lives. You know, I think what makes a great new shepherd is somebody who is actually already shepherding.
Right.
Not like,
Right.
hey, teach me how to shepherd, but hey, I'm already shepherding a group of people, and we recognize that, so we would like for you to be one of our shepherds. Or one of our elders. And as a youth minister, I need to be pouring into young adults and to parents and even teenagers, right? A big part of my job, I always remember people are like, we want a youth-led worship service, Well, part of my job is inspiring teenagers to kind of take up that mantle and to be able to do that kind of stuff. That's really powerful, and that's really good for them. That's what inspired me to be a youth minister. Was my youth minister sat down and was like, hey, would you mind leading 3 or 4 songs at the Devo tonight? And so I would go, sure, I could do that. And that was something that I kind of stepped up into.
Right.
And so when we're talking about these transition moments, we have to make sure that we're doing that. And that's what makes like church leadership hard and difficult, is because it's really easy just to like do it myself. It's really easy just to keep doing it the same old way. But when you start inviting other people to learn how to do it or help do things or know how to do things, what do they bring with them? Their ideas.
Their ideas,
and if
right?
they bring their ideas, then there could be change and there could be, a different way to do it. I think about like the people who invented, that like plastic funnel thing for communion. And you go, and somebody was like, that's not the way we've always done it, or something. And they're like, yeah, but this way's way faster. Look at me go. I don't know. That's a dumb example, but, something like that. Sometimes it could be like crazy changeful or powerful. But I think it also prepares people I think we need to have less impact in our church when somebody transitions out, because we've already been focused on everyone being a part of the system, the program, the church.
Yeah, and there are some real challenges to that, though. And
Yeah.
the first challenge is that's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is
yeah.
a lot of work. And it requires me to, particularly as a minister, but if I'm thinking about the long-term future of the church, particularly in the churches in the United States, you're already seeing this in churches worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of Christianity is such, and the nature of the world is such, that I don't think we're too far removed from churches really having to be taught and led by vocational ministers. That I see not an end, but a decline in professional ministry.
Yeah.
And if it's kind of scary to think about, kind of working my way out of a vocation. But if the church is acting the way Christ designed the church to act, then the people are the ones who are doing the work.
Right.
And it can become so easy when you have someone in a position like a minister who does the visitation. Somebody needs to visit in the hospital. Well, the church kind of just says, well, we have a minister who does that. Mm-hmm. And I'll get up there if I can. If you don't have someone in that position, then the onus comes on to the church as a whole to respond to the people. And that's when the church is really powerful. It's when the church as a whole is ministering to its own people. That's when the church becomes a witness and a testimony to the world that says, look, we show up for one another. And who are all these people in the waiting room of the hospital? Oh, they're for the lady in room 223 who's getting ready to have surgery. They came to pray for her. This is her family, her church family.
Right.
You know, and it's not this is my minister or my pastor or my priest. Like, these are my people, and they're all here because they all showed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of training and preparation that we should be doing. And that's true whether we're talking about a church as a whole, and ultimately it's true even in our secular jobs as well. Mm-hmm. That if we are in charge of people, we are doing our company, our church, our community a disservice if we aren't preparing the next guy up.
Yeah. And that starts as young as teenagers, or young adults. I think sometimes, every once in a while, I'll hear someone say, "Well, the young people just aren't as involved as they should be," or we just don't have involvement. And sometimes, like, when I hear that, I think, like, well, what are you wanting them to be involved with? Have you told them? Have you let them know? Have you given them that freedom to do that? Have we really been training people, to do that, and that's what we need to do. Like, that's what get people plugged in. That's what people, do. I think of, it almost makes me think of like the idea, like if you have a deacon over, I'm going to really hammer this one because this one's on my mind. So if you have a deacon over technology, right, who does your streaming and stuff like that, should they actually do your streaming, or should they be the deacon over technology that finds people to do, the technology? Mm-hmm. I think the one deacon role, who most ministers are most frustrated at, but they probably do their job the best as far as getting other people involved, is the deacon over security. Right? Like everyone right now just went, oh yeah. Like, the deacon of security is so good at recruiting other guys, other people to be on the security team and do that and train other people to do what he does. Now we're most frustrated because they pull people out of the worship service, or they're in the back chit-chatting and talking and all that kind of stuff. And
they're also really good at turning off lights and locking doors.
That's right.
It's like, you locked me out.
Right.
Like, all my keys and stuff are in my office, and now all the doors are locked because I walked somebody out to their...
But it's amazing how much, like, we could actually learn from that guy, that deacon of security, because he's doing something that the rest of us need to be doing, which is recruiting and talking and making sure that people know our job and what we're doing and stuff like that. Story time. I always have this deep-seated fear of, like, not being needed, like, as a youth minister, right? And so,
right.
I want to go on vacation and people be nervous that I go on vacation because they're like, well, I just hopefully I can do what you do on Wednesday nights. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I hope that you have a okay class. And that when I get back, people are like, oh, finally, Aaron's back. That is the wrong attitude. That is the wrong mindset. I need to be able to go on vacation and have no worry, and everything should go just as good. And all the details and everything should be fine because, like Terry Kitson, pulpit minister, now at Mansfield Church of Christ, was a mentor of mine in Kansas. He used to say, Aaron, you should have a retreat so planned that if last minute you got hit by a car, You could send all your notes with somebody, and they could run the whole retreat without you. Like, you should be so prepared that your retreat could be ran completely without you. I don't know that I'll ever be at that place, right? But he made a really good point. Like, I should be able to, like, leave on vacation and still, like, my job is having all that prepped, training other people to be prepped and ready to do that. That's how you mentor. That's how you move on and that kind of stuff. It's not to be the guy who does everything yourself, but to kind of help prep and prepare other people. And it's really easy for us to fall into that line. So how do we get to that place? How do we change our mindset, change ourselves to reaching out and teaching? How do we become more like the deacon of security and reach out and teach others to do what we do?
Well, I guess that's a question we can answer another time because I don't have an answer and it's time to go.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't leave yet. Don't leave. No. Ultimately, I think it comes with a realization of who the body of Christ is and what we are to be as the church. As ministers, I have people who remind me regularly, it's not about you.
Right.
It's not about you. And you can go do this. And is it going to be the same? No, it's not going to be the same. But it's going to be just fine. You know why? It's just not about you.
It's not about you.
We're glad you're here. You're doing a great work here. Your job is secure. We're going to love you when you come. But people need to hear a word from these other people at times. And that's one of the things I'm really trying to impress on many of the people around is the church needs to hear a voice that's not mine.
Yeah.
I have a guy that fills in for me, and
especially
he's got
song leading.
he's got a much different style than me. He's got a different background. He's got a different experience, and he always says, "I don't know, man." And I said, "Listen, the church needs to hear you.
Yeah.
They need to hear your voice. They need to hear your perspective." I tell that to my elders all the time. Like, I know that you aren't all comfortable in the public speaking role, but the church needs to hear you.
That's very true. For a lot of elders, I have seen a lot of silent elders. And I think, I don't think that, it doesn't mean that they necessarily need to preach, and it doesn't mean that they need to get up and make announcements. Like, that's good for you to do, but that's not making your voice heard. They need to hear your heart, and they need to hear your thoughts, especially biblical thoughts. So teaching class and other things like that, I think is crucial for a shepherd. I think, but to fill that void with, well, we're going to make sure our voice is heard by having a different elder rotate to do announcements. Why don't we find one of the elders who's super good at giving announcements, and we'll just use that one. But let's all rotate for teaching class or co-teaching a class with somebody, because that's where I think people really need to hear your voice.
Yeah, or around the table, the communion meditation. Or
definitely around the communion. I love when elders give the communion talk.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me, but I love when our shepherds give up and give the communion talk. I wish that was a tradition in the churches of Christ. Like that was our thing. Like, hey, when you become a shepherd, you're in charge of the communion talk. Because talk about like a role that just says, hey, I'm one of your shepherds. This is something that's extremely important. Dare to say even the most important thing that we do on Sundays. So I need your attention.
Yeah. It's a very centering moment, right? I mean,
it is.
It's that anchor point. So coming into this place where getting the people to understand, not only do you need to hear someone else's voice, they also need to hear your voice. To hear from their peers and their people a word from God.
Yeah.
Teaching, preaching, all of these things are so important. But I have to get myself into that mindset where it's easy for me to look at the growth that we've had and say, this is all about me. I did this, these people are here because of me, and that's just simply not true. A part to play in it? Sure, I had a part to play in it. Did many other people who were around her have a part to play in it? Absolutely they did. But the guy who really had a part to play in it is going to work through me, and he's going to work through the next guy, and he's going to work through anybody that steps into my role.
Right.
Because the success of this church is not dependent upon me. Now, while the growth of this church is not dependent upon me, I do have the ability to single-handedly destroy the growth of the church by refusing to allow people to find their talents and their gifts and abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be a person who leads people to follow. I want to lead people to lead. And it really is about training and leading leaders. And like you said earlier, it starts at a young age. Those youth nights are important, even if they just stand up and read a scripture, to learn to lead a scripture. However, you're training your young women to develop those talents and abilities of understanding who God has created them to be. Of teaching them those gifts and how to develop those gifts so that when they are called upon years or decades down the road, those things are already honed and they're developed and they're ready.
Yeah.
And so it really does start with just a very intentional mindset. I've been preaching a series on elders and deacons over the last several weeks. And the way I've been preaching it is saying, look, this is who we are all to be as God's people. And you said it earlier, if we are all living in this way, when it comes time to call leaders out from among us, we're going to look over the crowd and go, we can't appoint everybody. So who are we going to choose? Make this difficult decision, not because there's no one to choose from, but because we have everyone to choose from. And then those people who are following from a position of, and when they go out into the world, they're leaders and they're leading people to Christ because that's who we've developed from a very, very young age.
That's what's happened.
And we have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And we have to have the humility and the courage in who God is to be able to do that. So I just think it comes to giving our church the freedom to do what I do, and to explore that that depth of who God calls us to be.
Well, and it also has to, like, in order to get to this place, like, we have to talk about it, right? We have to be willing to talk about it. We have to be willing to talk about, like, what are we going to do when this person's gone? What are we going to do? It's kind of one of those things. And so, like, the first step for me, so if you're one of our viewers, and this might be our behind the beers moments to talk about, if you're one of our viewers and you're like, okay, guys, this is a great episode. Aaron, you're looking really awesome. Your beard is on point today. These are the thoughts that you have. How do I get to that point? How do I change my mindset, my idea of preparing and leading others to it? Well, I think the first one is really just thinking about it and knowing about it. Like, are you at a church and you find yourself going, we're out of song leaders? Like, we used to have like 15 and now we only have 6. What happened? Did you stop teaching people how to lead songs? Well, you mean people just don't naturally know how to lead? No, they don't. So we have to pour into but the first step that I want to say is to acknowledge that there's a need. And there might not be a need right now, but there's going to be one down the future. Right? Second step is talking about it with other people. You don't have to say, hey, I want you to come learn to do this to take over for me. Just say, hey, I think it would be cool if you could shadow me while I do this. One of my biggest, in my office, I have a picture of me and this guy named Scott Mitchell. And he used to, like, put me in his little car and we would drive early in the morning on Sunday morning, go to some small little podunk church, and he would give me 10 minutes. 10 minutes of the sermon time. And he stopped inviting me when I continued to take more than 10 minutes of his sermon time. When I was like at 20, 25 minutes. I think one time I preached a full sermon. And he was like, well, there's no time for me to preach. But thanks, Aaron, for that sermon. That was an excellent sermon, you know. And I think that was like my last time I got to go with him. Because he was like, okay, you're ready. But he mentored me and taught me like how to preach. He talked about my sermon on the way home. Talked about my sermon on the way there, what I was going to say, what was I going to do. But he mentored me to kind of do that. I don't know that he ever like imagined that I would go off to school and I would become a youth minister who occasionally preaches. But I don't have a fear of public speaking because I've been doing it for a young age. And he would do that with a whole bunch of people. So I saw that he then started taking this other teenager younger than me, Ethan Bradshaw. And what happens when I come back from college and even now? Well, I see a young adult who is plugged into doing youth ministry. He doesn't do it full time, but he is willing and wanting to serve in the church because somebody poured into him those ideas. And so, that's what we need to be doing. We need to be doing that. And we need to be doing that with everything. Elders, hey, I'm going to go pray with this person. I wonder if this other person can go with me. They're not a deacon. They're not an elder, but I'm going to take you and go pray with this other person. Right. And pouring into and involving other people instead of just doing things ourselves. And it's more like just being aware. Just being aware and being mindful and pre-planning. So, you got something?
I'm going to share this.
Oh, there it is.
This is from David Kinnaman. And it needs to be a little more central on my desk, so I think of it more often. And it says we need new architects to design interconnected approaches to faith transference. We need new ecosystems of spiritual and vocational apprenticeship that can support deeper relationships and more vibrant faith form. To recognize generational shifts from left brain skills like logic analysis and structure to the right brain attributes of creativity, synthesis, and empathy. We need to renew our catechisms and confirmations, not because we need new theology, but because our current forms too rarely produce young people of deep think our assumptions, and we need the creativity, honest, and vitality of the next generation to help us.
Yeah.
And I think that just really sums up, and we can get thrown off by languages like catechisms and confirmations, but ultimately that's just the way that we think and the way that we transfer our habits and our theology to the next generation.
Yeah.
And if we aren't preparing that next generation for what is to come, and that's not just young people to older people, that's just the next generation of leaders in the church. And some of them are 30 and 40 years old right now. We still have to be training them and have, and not fear comes about when we start bringing other people in to the role that we play.
Absolutely. And honestly, these are just some of those good things, right? These are just some of those good things. Hey, man, guys, I am so thankful that you guys were here today. And if you're listening to this later on, we're glad that you are downloading and listening to our podcast. We want to remind you of something, Galatians 6:9, do not grow weary in doing good. This is one of those good things that we're talking about. This is a good thing, is pouring into others and leading them to leadership, even in the smallest capacity there is. This world is messy. This life is messy. So allow Christ to use you and do something different, something good in His name. I'm Aaron. That's Josh. And we'll see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.